on It's Supernatural. Aliens, UFOs, are they real? A former branch chief of the Department of Guided Missiles says yes. Discover the shocking truth behind UFOs, where they come from, and what their end-time plan is.
Can ancient secrets of the supernatural be rediscovered? Do angels exist? Is there life after death? Are healing miracles real? Can you get supernatural help from another dimension? Has the future been written in advance? Sid Roth has spent 30 years researching the strange world of the supernatural. Join Sid on this edition of It's Supernatural.
Hello, Sid Roth here. Welcome to my world, where it's naturally supernatural. Are UFOs real? I mean, for sure. Does the Bible talk about them? Are UFOs involved in end-time Bible prophecy, end-time events? Could they be a little piece of a puzzle that we have missed? My guest, Chuck Missler, says yes. He's a Naval Academy graduate and former branch chief of the Department of Guided Missiles, CEO of 6 public companies. 4 of the 6 were highly classified in the Department of Defense. Chuck Missler, you are such, in my opinion, and I'm entitled to say this, you are such a renowned, wonderful Bible teacher. Are you a little Miss Sugar? What are you talking about? UFOs, flying saucers? I don't get it.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the intended encouragement, but I really came at this whole subject because of my love for the Bible. It happens that I come out of an information science background. My whole career, 30 years in the strategic community, gives me perhaps a little different perspective than most people would have going at this topic. But I want to right up front indicate it was my biblical interest that brought me into this rather than my high-tech background, although that's proven to be, that and my Department of Defense connections have been very valuable to me. So that's one of the reasons I find myself in this peculiar posture.
But it's not, in other words, he has a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge from the intelligence community, which helps him put a lot together of what we'll be talking about. But he's saying it's his love for the Bible that is really motivating him right now. So you found a controversial verse in Genesis 6, which has to do with a prophecy that Jesus said.
Let's start with, I start with Jesus, and in Matthew 24, he gives 4 disciples an inside briefing on a second coming. And in that briefing, he makes a very strange remark. He says, as the days of Noah were, so shall the days of the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, many people presume he just meant that it was because of the business as usual. So anyway, the point is, we need to understand what the days of Noah were like in order to understand what he was saying. So that takes us to Genesis 6, and when you jump into Genesis 6, you quickly discover that very few seminaries teach what that passage really says. And so as you get into that Genesis 6, you have to understand the first 2 verses are 1 sentence, and it deals with this strange goings-on between the fallen angels producing hybrids with humans. And that was so uncomfortable in the early years of the church that it was the understanding of the early rabbis. It was also the understanding of the early church that what it was dealing with was fallen angels cohabiting with human women, producing a strange hybrid offspring. But when you get to about the 5th century, that was a very uncomfortable posture. So they cooked up this, what they call the lines of Seth argument, and that's what's taught in most seminaries. One of the things I discover is that many people who are seminary products of most seminaries haven't been taught that there are different perspectives of Genesis 6, and it's the literal, careful study version of Genesis 6 that starts to raise the fog on this whole issue.
Now tell me about the word Nephilim. What does that mean?
In the Hebrew, it comes from the verb nephal. It means the fallen ones, and that's the term used. Don't confuse that with the fallen angels. The fallen angels, according to Genesis 6, cohabited with human women to produce a hybrid offspring that are called in the Hebrew the Nephilim. In the Septuagint version of the Old Testament, the translation of the Old Testament into Greek, they use the word gigantes, which is transliterated giants, right. And they did happen to be giants, but that's not what the word means. The word actually means, in the Greek, the earthborn. And so, from the Greek point of view, they're earthborn. From the Hebrew point of view, they're the fallen ones. But either way, they're pointing to a hybrid, and it apparently was part of Satan's plan to contaminate the Messianic line.
But so the purpose of the flood was to get rid of these.
Exactly. That's that's exactly the point. You study verse 9 of Genesis 6. It speaks of Noah, that his genealogy was untainted, unblemished. And apparently it was a distinctive in that sense. He may not have been the only one unblemished, but the fact that he was unblemished qualified him for what God was going to do, among other things. But the point is, the whole issue that God chose to do was to save 8 people in the ark and erase the blackboard, so to speak. Okay,
but if the blackboard was erased, then we don't have to fool with them today, if they were all destroyed.
Except Genesis 6 verse 4 says there were Nephilim in the land in those days, comma, and also after that. And we discover, many good Bible scholars miss this, that you really won't understand subsequent events in the Old Testament by not realizing it happened again. When God, in Genesis 15 and Genesis 17, confirms the land covenant to Abraham, he tells Abraham that he and his descendants are going to be away for 400 years, but after 400 years, they're going to return. That gave Satan, who's obviously listening, the realization that he had 4 centuries to lay down a minefield. And that's why, when Moses enters the land, and he sends his at Kadesh Barnea, he sends in the 12 reconnoiters, if I can call them that. They come back and say, and Numbers 13, verse 33 says they were Nephilim in the land. So it happened again.
I'll tell you what, hold that thought. Did you know that a dozen astronauts have reported UFOs? Don't go away, we'll be right back.
We'll be right back to It's Supernatural.
When Jesus prayed that they all may be one, there were only 2 people groups, Jews and Gentiles. Denominations did not exist. 2,000 years later, his prayer is still yet to be fulfilled. God's purpose from the beginning was for all nations to become one in Yeshua, Messiah Jesus. To break down the middle wall of separation dividing Jew and Gentile, so that the world may believe that Yeshua is the Messiah and Lord over all. When Jewish spiritual DNA merges with the New Covenant Christian DNA, there will be what Paul called life from the dead. That's why Sid Roth's website is loaded with cutting-edge articles and teaching about the one new man. Log on to sidroth.org today.
We now return to It's Supernatural.
Hello, Sid Roth here with Chuck Missler. And Chuck, so many astronauts are reporting UFOs, but one was amazing. This one astronaut, John Blaha, a ham radio operator, actually picked up what he was saying. As a matter of fact, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Let's take a look at that now.
The wording is as follows. Houston, this is Discovery. We still have the alien spacecraft under observance.